Terence Crawford is the #1 pound for pound fighter in the world. Let's get that straight. Let's be real. Inoue Inoue's a great fighter. Don't get me wrong. I give him all the credit in the world. I think he's really exciting to watch. I think that he puts on great performances. He's been able to become undisputed in 2 fights. I think that's something that can't be ignored. I just think that we have to take into account level of opposition. Now, beating a guy like Cool Boy Steph, that's the first fight that we take into account. You know, demolishes him. You know, gets that stoppage win, and no one's ever done that to Cool Boy Steph. But to go on to beat Marlon Tapales the way that he did, you know, stoppage win. It wasn't exactly like a crazy dominant performance. He got the stoppage, but it wasn't like outstanding. Like, I respect the stoppage. I respect the stoppage. Don't get me wrong. I just know that, you know, the Cool Boy Steph fight was more impressive to me for sure, but still great performance. But I think we have to remember that Terence Crawford beat a guy that we all had in our top 5 pound for pound best fighters in the world. And I don't want to hear anybody saying like Errol Spence wasn't on my pound for pound list, because that's a lie. Because how at that point we all had Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, you know, 1A, 1B. So by Terence Crawford beating Errol Spence, we can't just throw away the fact that Errol Spence was in our pound for pound list. We can't just disregard that completely. Terence Crawford beat a guy that was arguably the best fighter in the world in Errol Spence Jr. Now everybody has the perspective of, oh, Errol was a bum. Errol was never on Terence's level. That's fine now, but we can't forget that he still beat the guy. You know, Terence Crawford still beat the guy. Inoue beat the guys in his division, but Errol Spence was a pound for pound best fighter in the world. And for Terence Crawford to dismantle him the way that he did, you know, Terence Crawford's got to be #1 in my book. Inoue's not #1, at least for me. I would say that Inoue has accomplished a lot this year, but he's not pound for pound #1. He could be fighter of the year. That's all subjective. I think that Terence Crawford made the biggest, had the biggest performance on top of the biggest fight. So I would give performance of the year to Terence Crawford. But if you want to say that Inoue fought 2 times and became undisputed within those 2 fights alone, I'm not mad at that either. But that's fighter of the year. I still think that Terence Crawford is pound for pound the best fighter in the world right now. You know, if you put, let's also get this straight. Pound for pound means that no matter what weight class they're in, if these guys were to fight, you know, this is the top guy, and I think that's Terence Crawford. You know, I don't think people are giving that Spence win enough credit. A lot of people, even including myself, like, I do think that the weight had something to do with it. I do think Errol Spence was depleted to some extent, but once I saw them get in the ring and I saw the movement, I was able to see that Terence Crawford's a little bit too, he's too multifaceted. Like, he has too much to work with. He has too many openings that Errol Spence couldn't close up in time, wasn't able to handle. You know, people talk about Errol Spence's rib injury, you know, the pre-existing rib injury. This is the sport of boxing. If you know anything about the sport of boxing, you also know that a fighter rarely goes into the ring feeling his best. Rarely goes through the training camp. A 7 to 8 week training camp, and you're saying that doesn't take a toll on the body. All of these fighters are injured in some way, some facet, but Terence Crawford, he went in there and put on a dominant performance. It's very possible that Terence Crawford had an injury, had something wrong with his body as well, but he went in there and performed. That's bottom line. The outcome was what it was, and Terence Crawford put a beating on Errol Spence Jr., a top 5 pound for pound fighter at the time. No matter where you have him now, he was a top 5 pound for pound fighter. So for Terence Crawford to beat that guy, even though Errol Spence, you know, everyone thinks Errol's a bum now, Terence Crawford beat that guy. So that makes him, in my book, the #1 pound for pound fighter over Inoue. And that's no discredit to Inoue. Inoue's a great fighter. It's Crawford, Inoue, then you could go Usyk, Fury, whoever you want. I'd argue that Fury's a little bit, you know, on the decline because of that fight against Francis Ngannou, which wasn't really telling. I do think that he kind of slouched for that fight and, you know, took Ngannou lightly, but that's the heavyweight division. I'd argue that, you know, the lighter weights are, I've always been saying that the lighter weights are more competitive. They're the more talented fighters. But Terence Crawford, for me, is #1 pound for pound. That performance was just a beat down. To have that clash of styles where it's literally 1A and 1B, and to put on a dominant performance like that stuff is rarely seen. You know, it wasn't even a competitive fight from the first round on. You know, I gave Errol Spence the first round, and it was a close round. So, you know, from then on, it was Terence Crawford all the way. And it's not easy for me to say, because I was kind of rooting for Errol Spence. And because he was my pick, so I was expecting to see a certain thing. But there was no question about Terence Crawford being the better fighter on that night. So all the respect in the world to Terence Crawford for doing his thing, shutting haters like me up. I wasn't a hater. I just really felt like Spence was gonna beat him. But styles make fights, and we saw all those tools come out. We saw him stay southpaw and just dismantle and beat up Earl Spence for 9 rounds, when realistically the fight could have been stopped way earlier, around the 4th or 5th round. But Earl Spence is tough. He took a lot of big shots, still protested the stoppage, but it was stopped, rightfully so. Maybe it could have been stopped earlier. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. Inoue versus Terence Crawford. Who is the pound for pound best fighter in the world? I think for fighter of the year, you could give it to Inoue if you want, but I still think pound for pound, number one is Terence Bud Crawford for beating Earl Spence. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.
That's going to do it for another Nads Fight Media video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been your boy, Matt Nabong, with another video. Hope you guys enjoyed it all. Thank you guys for the constant support. Salute to y'all always. It's been your boy.